All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock. It's time to begin our regular meeting of the Public Safety Commission for the City of Desert Hot Springs. It's Thursday, September 9th. And we are going to kick off with a call to order, which we've just done. And Kelsey, could you please do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Eastman?
Here.
Commissioner Levy?
Here.
Commissioner Lozano?
Here.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
Here.
Chairman Meyer?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and let's move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. And, you know, if we could, while we're doing the pledge, maybe just keep in your thoughts the 13 soldiers who we lost overseas just within the last couple weeks. 3 of them are from Riverside County. 1 of them is from right here in the Coachella Valley. Your brothers, yes. So, yeah, so if you could just keep that in mind when we're doing the pledge. And Cliff, would you like to lead it?
Yes, but I'd also like to make a comment.
Please.
I'm going to ask everybody to keep their thoughts and prayers with Jan Pye. She was rushed to the hospital during council meeting on Tuesday.
What's wrong?
I'd rather not get into that.
Yeah, maybe do that
Let
sidebar.
her talk to her, but I spoke to her this morning and this afternoon, and she's on her way home, or she probably should be home by now, resting. So just everybody keep their thoughts and prayers with her.
Good point. All right, let's do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Cliff. Okay, let's move on to approval of the agenda. We got quite a bit on there. We got like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 items of new business. So, and then our regular reports. So, any, thank you for doing that, Kelsey, because I know you had a lot to put on there. Any changes or any changes anybody wants to make?
Let's see, that's, at last meeting, I was not absent.
Okay. Well, that's the minutes. We haven't got there yet. We're on the
okay.
agenda.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if there's no changes to the agenda, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Donna. Can we get a vote? Haven't seen it yet. There we go. Okay, good. It passes. All right, let's move to approval of the minutes. And Cliff, you said you had an issue with it? I think you were absent. Remember, it was 2 months ago, and I remember you couldn't get a signal out. You were back east. So are we okay? Okay, cool. Yeah. We were all here a month ago, but we weren't at a meeting. So, okay. Any other issues with the minutes from 2 months ago? If not, I'll need a motion to approve, please.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ken. Can we get a vote, Kelsey? Thank you. All right, passes 5-0. All right. Do we have any public comments?
No public comments at this time.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and skip that. We'll get right to the presentations. So we'll go ahead. Item number 2 under new business, new design for the police department presentation. Chief Shaw? Thank you, sir.
Do we have a clicker? Do it. Okay.
So good evening. This portion of the presentation, I'm going to go over the proposed tenant improvements to the current police facility, as well as the addition of the new police annex building to be located adjacent to the current building. Next slide. Just some background. Desert Hot Springs Police Department current police facility was built in 1988 and has approximately 9,000 square feet. In the 33 years since it was constructed, the police department has grown in function and size. With the addition of dispatch being added to the police department, it became apparent the police facility could not house a fully functional communication center without modification to the current facility. The addition of dispatch provided us the challenge of finding the space to fit a fully functional communications center into the police department's current footprint that would meet the needs of the department now and in the future. Next slide. Current infrastructure within the police department building dictated that dispatch remain within the police department building, but to do so, another unit within the organization would be required to move out. Given the space needed, the logical choice was to relocate the current detective bureau and the crime lab. The space these two units currently occupied met the needs requirement for dispatch. The detective area and crime lab have also needed additional space for some time, so this seemed to provide the perfect opportunity to accomplish both. With City Hall moving to its new facility and vacating the property adjacent to the current police building, we considered this as an opportunity to relocate the Detective Bureau into a larger, more mission-appropriate space. We also studied the overall policing function of the department and the city's future policing needs as we designed what we are referring to as the police annex building. The photos that were above you there were just the detective area as it stood actually right now, minus the furniture. Next slide. This is going to be an animated video, and Kelsey, if you can just start playing the video, and I'll just kind of talk along with it. The police annex building will include enhanced perimeter security around in the entire public safety campus, from West Drive to the new police annex building, to include a perimeter wall and vehicle access controlled by security gates. Additional parking will have parking canopies to better protect vehicles and equipment from the weather elements. And those are the canopies and additional parking that you see going through the animation right now. And this will be the front, so as you enter off of Pearson. And not shown in this picture, then next to this is the current code building. This area will be open to the public during business hours throughout the week. The police annex building will be a 5,880 square foot standalone facility during normal business hours in the main parking lot, which is accessible through the former City Hall. Driveway and parking lot will be open to the public for both police annex and code compliance buildings. As you enter the police annex building, you will enter the lobby and reception area that will have public restroom facilities and separate access points to the Detective Bureau and field operations. The south wing of the building, which you are entering right here, will be what houses the Detective Bureau and will consist of 6 private offices, cubicle workspaces, an interview room, temporary evidence storage, and a break area. And as you go along, on my right are the private offices, and then in the middle of that space will be the cubicles for detective and other office staff. And then the area along the east side of that wall will be the break room for that area. And then there's a couple other private offices and storage closets and interview rooms over in that area of the wing. As we continue now, we're going to go towards the north wing of the building. The north wing will house a large briefing room and training center. This area will also be utilized as a regional training center, allowing for regional training to be held locally to reduce training costs and to keep current with the training mandates required by the state in all areas, as well as policing reforms. And that's the room that we're entering here right now. This room will also be equipped as a backup emergency operations center for the City Council chambers, should that facility be lost during a catastrophic event. So again, this area will be equipped for the briefings for the patrol officers, large meetings and training, and a temporary EOC should it be needed. Emergency Operations Center. As you leave this area, the north wing will also include expanded officer locker room and officer bathroom facilities appropriate to the department's current and future needs. Officers will have direct access to the locker room and bathroom facilities from the secured officer parking area, which is located along the north of the side of the building. So currently now, officers have to, from the parking lot, take their gear, walk down the hallway through the building, through the briefing room, and then to the locker rooms. This will allow them to go straight, park their cars, grab their gear out of it, walk straight into the locker room, or utilize outdoor lockers that would be provided there, also under the carport canopies protecting them from the elements. And this is the area along here where we have additional lockers. And this just takes you back around to the front side of the building where we started with the animation. And we can go to the next slide, Kelsey. It might run again, so we might just, there we go. In addition to what you just saw, we are also proposing tenant improvements to the current police facility, which will accommodate a fully contained communications center located in the current space occupied by the Detective Bureau and the Crime Lab. And that was that area at the beginning of the slideshow. The only thing that's changed right now is that office furniture and the cubicles have already been removed from that area, so it's just a complete, basically open canvas for them to start with the communications center. The Communications Center is currently fully funded in budget year, fiscal year 21-22. The Communications Center will provide 5 fully functional dispatch consoles in the bullpen area and 1 additional console in the supervisor's office. It'll also include a break room specifically for communications personnel and 2 bathrooms with shower and locker facilities specifically for communications personnel. So the idea is that the Communications Center will be fully self-contained. It won't have disturbances from officers or anybody going in there. Everything they'll need will be right within that area. Next slide. This is a current briefing room and locker room in the current facility. Tenant improvements include removing the current briefing room and locker facilities, and we will use that existing space and add the following. Next slide. I know it's a little difficult maybe on the diagram to see, but as you look at the diagram, the left side is the area that will be converted to the new communications center. The right side is the existing briefing room and locker facilities that will be converted into 4 offices and a reception area for a 5th desk, and those officers are private office areas. It'll also include a bunk room for officers who are held over for court or special events, a full unisex bathroom and shower facility, and reconfiguration of the armory. Current office space across the hallway from the current briefing room will be reconfigured to relocate the crime lab to a larger and more functional space and provide a dedicated secure storage space. Next slide. As mentioned before, we have already moved out the Detective Bureau from the current facility. The Detective Bureau is currently housed in the old Building C until the police annex is completed. This was necessary due to the new communications center having already been funded and expected to begin construction before the end of this year. Building C, we did some minor improvements on that building for the detectives, but it's been working out very well. They've been in that over a month now, and it's worked out very well for them, and will work as a good functional temporary building space for them until the new building is done. Next slide. It is our belief, with the addition of the police annex and the above requested tenant improvements that we're doing, the police department will be capable of improving services we provide to the community, keep current with changing training mandates, and accommodate future growth and needs we anticipate in the years to come. And that concludes my presentation, but happy to take any questions if you have any.
Excellent. Questions for the chief? Donna?
Are you utilizing any solar power with these buildings?
We currently do.
Oh, okay.
Behind the building, behind the parking lot area and the hillside, that's all solar.
Oh,
that is-
good.
The building is
Okay.
equipped with, and that'll continue with the new building.
And how long will this all happen?
The first phase is the communication center, which is already funded. Again, that's expected to start, hopefully break ground by the end of the year or the very first part of the new year. It's anticipated to take 4 to 5 months to complete that construction. After the communications center, the next part of construction will be the new annex building. And then after the annex building is completed, then they'll come back to the current building and take care of the tenant improvements in that building. Anticipate probably anywhere between 2 and 3 years from now for the entire construction to take place
Really?
until it's completed.
Thank you.
Other questions? Cliff?
Yeah. Steve, you didn't mention a holding space.
We
With-
currently have one in the current building, and that will remain unchanged, and it has 3 temporary holding spaces in that in there.
Okay.
I just want to thank you for the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's, I originally moved into that building, the one in 1988, because we were here at that time, and that time it served 18 sworn and like 12 or 13 support staff. And we were happier than everything because it was huge compared to, we had 1,500 feet where the old city hall, city council chambers were in the building up there, the May Center up there by Carl, we had the end of the building. So we had a chief's office, a dispatch center, and two desks.
I've seen some old pictures.
Yeah, you've seen the old pictures, and we had 3 chairs with a bar that you handcuffed people to at the back door. So when we moved down to the big facility down there, it was a dream come true, and a lot of really smart people designed that, because here we are 34 years later, and it actually still looks good, and it actually still fits in well with the city. So who's going to be left there? You're going to have dispatch, you're going to have the chief's office. I know you're building like 5 or 6 new offices in the old locker room area.
Yeah, so the current building is really basically going to be dispatch and administration. And then in the new building, it'll be the detective and the patrol operations.
Okay.
So that's basically how it's going to be broken up.
Okay.
Steve, the first 2 pictures of the inside, is that where the communication center is going to be located?
Yeah, and I think those pictures still have the furniture in there.
Yeah.
That's been moved out, but that's the majority of it. What you don't see in that picture behind that is the old CSI area, crime scene office space, and that's also being incorporated into the communication center where the locker area and break room will be.
Yeah, that's where my old cubicle was when I volunteered for code enforcement. I noticed the furniture and the...
So we'll have admin, we'll have dispatch, and we'll have forensics and evidence storage over there.
And records.
And records, right, yeah,
Correct.
records.
Yeah.
And that takes up a huge space, so.
Correct.
So, go ahead, Don.
So where does someone go that needs you right away?
It will still have, so the current building, which we have the front counter area, the front lobby area,
Oh,
that will
okay.
still remain open 24/7.
Okay.
And then in the new building, that will be open during office hours during the
Oh,
week.
okay.
But the current area that's open, that will still remain open 24/7.
Thank you.
Okay. And is that, the money for that coming out, that's all budgeted, or is that money for the annex coming out of the new bond thing that was just passed?
Yeah, so the communication was already budgeted,
Mhm.
and then the bond measure is what was covering the police department upgrades, yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else for the chief?
No, it was a nice presentation. I thought I recognized a couple of the officers walking around in the office.
Thank you, chief. Yeah, it's time. We're the fastest growing city in the Coachella Valley. It's Yeah, you wouldn't recognize me back in 1988. Yeah, so, but yeah, it's probably time, so, but. Lee, do you mind if I say something about your?
Well, otherwise, everybody knows.
Yeah, I'm just, if you don't see Commissioner Eastman asking a lot of questions, he's having a little voice problem, so.
I was diagnosed right now with arthritis.
Hit your button.
in my legs.
There you go.
I think I was diagnosed with arthritis in my legs by my regular doctor, and he's going to send me to a specialist for arthritic problems in October, believe it or not. I'll see a specialist, and I don't know, my voice, something's wrong with my voice box, but I had it checked. I've had x-rays of my esophagus, and I had my throat checked. Everything's good. There's no cancer. There's no growth. I'm all good there, but they just don't know why I can't talk, and they're not sure why my legs are so weak. But hopefully I'll find something out in October, and that's probably the last thing you're going to hear from me tonight. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so it's up to the rest of us to try to read Lee's mind and ask the questions he would ask, so. Okay. I just want to make sure everyone understood why Lee wasn't doing his normal question asking.
I appreciate that.
No problem. Let's move on to new business item number 3, projection of cost for a specialized team. This was something I asked for specifically because we were looking at issues as to addressing future crime trends and stuff. And one of the member of council is also interested in creating a specialized team for grand theft auto problems, but we thought maybe we should just look at it as a more general team. So we asked the chief to look at what the cost would be and how that would kind of look. So if the city council decides to move forward with that down the road, they'll have a framework and a cost already developed, so we don't have to recreate it like 2 months down the road when we really need it. So Chief, you want to do that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just kept it as like you mentioned, a basic specialized team that can go out and really just focus on whatever the issues really are at that particular time. Not focus on one particular issue like the auto theft or anything like that. We started with a team that was 2 officers and a sergeant. And so what I broke down was just that cost, the first year cost and then the recurring year cost for that. And the costs, when I talk about the salaries for the officer, that's the fully burdened cost. And so, when I'm talking about a fully burdened cost, that's not only their actual annual salary, but that also includes any advanced post certificate they may have, any other incentive that they may have, which could be, it could be an FTO, they could be bilingual, that type of thing. It includes a uniform allowance, city paid benefits, their PERS contribution, which is the retirement contribution, that's on the employer part. Workers' comp costs, Medicare costs, and unemployment taxes, and those are the costs that the city pays. So that's what the fully burdened costs. So what it breaks down to is for a sergeant, and I kind of went on the average, for a sergeant for the year, fully burdened is $196,644. For an officer, it's $154,254 officers. And then with that team, they would require 2 vehicles, one for the sergeant, and then the 2 officers would be in the vehicle. And for 2 fully outfitted vehicles, police vehicles, the cost on that is $151,985. So the total startup cost for the first year would be $657,137. And then the yearly cost after that for 1 sergeant and 2 officers is $505,152. So the yearly cost after that first year, that just takes away the cost of those 2 vehicles. And depending on the mileage and how those vehicles use is depending on how much use we get out of those, how many years we get out of the vehicles and stuff. So, but that's basically what it comes down to. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, questions for the chief on that? No? Okay, so basically, if we want to go to that, we've got to add the 3 positions in the long run, it's going to be about $500,000 a year.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And then we'd probably have office space for that team in with the Detective Bureau?
With the new annex, once all that's done, because obviously that build includes future growth for us, so
Yeah.
we will, yes.
I always like to mix in those because the detectives were always your reactive, but your special teams were always your proactive. When you put the two of them together,
Yeah, and currently our
Yeah.
detectives, we have like our task force officers, they're housed in that, so that trailer where the detectives are currently housed right now, that's also where we house our task force officers too. So, and in the new annex building, it'll be set up the same way.
yeah. And I mean, you know, we have a homeless issue. This is something they would be dealing with. They, you know, we have a grand theft auto issue. We would assign them to that. We could assign them to traffic. You know, if we've got a traffic issue going on. So, yeah, it's just it's a really great tool to have. So, okay, great. So, I don't know, do we need to, I don't know if we want to take a vote to recommend the city go with that. I don't think we're ready for that, are we? No? Okay, all right. So we'll just take it under submission, and then if it comes up later on, we can say we've already done the footwork. Makes sense? Is that okay with everybody?
Right.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Chief. Good report. That's kind of where I thought it was going to come in. So that's right where the right number should be. All right, code abatement process, item number 4 with Christina. And this one came up because we were interested in what we're doing with some of these properties that could be potential fire hazards for first responders, the danger of responding to continual fires at some of these places, and for citizens who might be around them and stuff like that. So that was about 3 months ago that we scheduled it? Okay, all right, cool. Sorry, Christina.
Oh, no, it's fine. Yeah, I'm ready. All right, so you can go to the next slide. I wanted to start by sort of explaining the basic code enforcement process as it comes in through the complaint. And then I just wanted to highlight that I know we talk about abandoned properties a lot. People see a property and they say, well, that's an abandoned property, but we define abandoned properties in the municipal code as properties that are residential and also in some sort of default of either the trustee or the sale, or they're going to be liened, tax auction, things of those nature. So when we talk about abandoned properties, it's very different than what the average person would say, well, that property is abandoned. And so, you know, when we had the housing crisis before and the market crashed, we developed an ordinance that would allow us to impose $1,000 a day cites for abandoned properties as we define them. But the average property that you see on the street is probably just going to be falling under this basic code enforcement process. And I'll get into the other various ways that we abate them. So the complaints come in, obviously, and we issue a service request. It's typically generated by our administrative assistant. We currently receive complaints in a variety of different ways. We have an app that you can just find on a basic app store, Android, iPhone. It does have some complications currently, so we've created a few other ways to receive complaints. One is through our online portal, the other is through the city's website, and then obviously you can always just phone in. Those service requests then generate an inspection. An officer will go out and conduct an inspection. Whether they find a violation or not will lead them to their next step. If there is no violation found, and you wouldn't think that this happens a lot, but it happens quite a bit. By the time we get there, it usually doesn't exist, or it's a neighbor calling on another neighbor just because they don't like each other, and so there's nothing really there. We'll go ahead and close the service request, but we do maintain those statistics, so it'll populate as something that we went and looked at. If the violation is found, we open a case. Can you go to the next slide? From there, we will issue what we call a voluntary compliance letter or a courtesy notice of violation. A voluntary compliance letter is just a really nice letter that we send that, you know, kind of says, would you please take care of this? And that's for really low level offenses. Things like overgrown weeds, you left your trash cans out an extra day, something like that that we know is probably pretty easily resolved. A courtesy notice of violation is more so we are, demanding that you do something with the compliance date. We'll then follow up in a 2-week time period, and if the violation is corrected, then we'll close the case. If it goes uncorrected, we then go to a final notice of violation. That then gets another 2-week compliance period. If it goes unresolved at that point, we issue an administrative citation for $100, and we will continue that process with the fines increasing $100 for the first offense, $200 for the second offense, and $500 for the third and subsequent. Next slide. If a compliance officer finds that they have sort of exhausted all of those remedies, all of the administrative citations, they'll then bring me the case for review. There's a couple of different things that we can do when we get to that point. If it's something low level, like this person just has weeds and they don't want to correct them, we're not typically going to move forward with an abatement process. There's a couple of reasons why. One, it takes a lot of man hours to go and get an abatement warrant to be able to go onto someone's property to conduct that abatement. And so for something very low level like that, we'll probably just close the case under the stipulation that, hey, this individual is not complying. If we receive another complaint, we'll go back out. And if that happens, if we've gone all the way to a $500 citation, and we open a case against you within 18 months, we can start that case at the $500 level citation. So there is some heavy penalties for people that reoffend. When we get into escalated enforcement actions, we can continue with administrative fines. So that means that we will continue the case, and probably most of the time, every 2 weeks to a month, you'll continue to get $500 citations. That's very rare that we do that. If we're going to continue a case for that long, we're usually going to start the abatement process. So one of the options that we have is what we call a compliance agreement with deposit. This is usually reserved for individuals who want to comply, but for some reason don't have the means or the time or the ability to comply. So when I talk about the ability, usually like a contractor that for some reason he can't get his plans back to obtain a building permit, something that would restrict him, but he has the ability. So what he can do is he can deposit a monetary amount that is required for the compliance agreement. And if he fails to meet any of the milestones within that agreement, we will pull from that deposit to draw for our time. Any staff time or enforcement actions that we have to take, we pull from that until he's in compliance. The other side of that is abatement. So we'll go in and we'll do the work ourselves. That usually includes small level items like removing trash, clearing vacant lots of dead and overgrown landscape, things of that nature. Then we get into the higher things, demolitions of properties, what we call receiverships, and I'll explain that later. And then an abandoned property case. So like I said before, if we define the property as abandoned, we will then start a case of $1,000 a day citation. Obviously, that's not something we like to do. We usually reserve that for, things that are actually abandoned. We can't find the owner, it's bank owed, things like that. So as you can imagine, those rack up pretty hefty fines very quickly. We're talking about $30,000 a month. And then the last thing is we will discuss the cost for carrying out these abatements with our superiors and ensure that it fits into the fiscal budget for the year. There's times when we just can't, we can't pay for demolitions. Some of these demolitions can range us, $50,000 to $70,000 each one. So we kind of have to weigh where we want to go and which direction. Next slide. So to talk a little bit about demolition, this will kind of give you an understanding of how long it takes for an officer to get to the point of demolition and then actually execute it. So demolition is typically reserved for properties with significant life safety issues or structural issues. What we do first is we obtain what's called a litigation guarantee, and that's essentially an insurance policy. So it is to ensure that we are noticing everybody with vested interest in the property. Once we have that and we know who has interest in the property, we issue a notice of public nuisance in an order to abate. That essentially is telling the property owner and everybody with interest, we have an intention to conduct an abatement if you do not come into compliance. We will give them a compliance date. At this point, it's usually a very short date. I'm talking 10 days. If they don't comply at that time, we re-inspect, we verify, and then we schedule an administrative hearing. So we have a third-party hearing officer come in and have a hearing. We present our case, and then the property owner or anybody with interest is allowed to present their case with any evidence they'd like to present. They also can have an attorney present. We then conduct the hearing, obviously, and we wait for the hearing decision. If it's in the city's favor, we then need to obtain a warrant. If we are denied, then we pause the case and we discuss possible next steps. Next slide. So for receivership, this is a second option if demolition is not warranted or if the property we think is in good structural sound. We don't necessarily want to move forward with demolition in a lot of cases because what that does is it leaves you with a piece of land that is vacant or we have assessed a lot of money against. And so that land will probably always remain vacant. So it's a detriment to the city and we don't like to go that route. So another option we have available to us is receivership. And a receiver is a neutral third party and an agent of the court who's required to act for the benefit of all parties in the case. The property is in the hands of the receiver. And it's also in the hands of the court. However, the title to the property remains with the property owner until sale. So the receiver will oversee the rehab of the property. He can either do it himself or he can sell it and then oversee the buyer's rehab of the property. Next slide. So this is part of our abatement process. Once we get to that point, obviously we need to obtain an abatement warrant for things like demolition or entering onto someone's property. It requires post and notice. We have to obtain bids from contractors and outline the scope of work. We then have to award the bid to the contractor and then have them complete the abatement work. For demolitions, we actually reach out to public utility companies and ensure that they abandon lines and disconnect services and then see through with the demolition. Next slide. So some of the follow-up items that we also do within this process is we need to issue demands for payments for all of the invoices that we incur during this process. That includes staff time, fully burdened time. So we issue a demand for payment once everything is completed, and we request that the property owner or whoever is responsible for the property pay that in full. If they do not pay it at the end of the fiscal year, we will assess that cost back to the property taxes. Next slide. And then these are just some examples of the various types of abatement. So this is just a regular run-of-the-mill abatement. This we requested that the contractor remove all of the trash, debris, and cut the weeds down. Next slide. This was a very large, I believe this was a 3 vacant parcel trash removal. This is over by the 5th Street Trailer Park. So this is an accumulation of trash over time that we had to abate with a contractor. Next slide. This is an example of a demolition that we did. This property was abandoned for about 10 years, and it took about a year and a half, almost 2 years to get to this process to be able to demo this, and this was very close to $70,000 because of the condition of that pool, and it was necessary to demolish the pool as well. Next slide. This is a demolition, but in this case, once we opened the case and contacted the property owner, they actually opted to demolish the property themselves. So that's always a win for the city because we don't incur any costs. We just oversee the compliance, ensure that they get the proper building permits, and move forward. Next slide. I apologize for the graphic photos, but this is the nature of code. So this is a property that is currently in receivership. This is a property on Buena Vista. This property owner passed away, and he had a sister who was living with him at the time. He was her caretaker. She had some mental illness, and so when he passed away, she remained there at the property with no caretaker. And unfortunately, we had transients take over the home. They were living in the back, living in the front, in every space that they could. As you can see, it was an absolute mess and just a copious amount of California Health and Safety Code violations. It took us, I want to say, about 3 years before the court appointed a receivership. And so that's another challenge that we face, that, sometimes we present these cases to the courts and they don't always turn out in our favor. And so then we have to go back to the drawing board and try again. Next photo. So this is the front of the house and the back of the house where there were some tents and some encampments. Next photo. And so the receiver has just got the possession of the property, has removed everyone, and so he started the cleanup. So this is the during photos. Next. And that's the after of all the cleanup. So the side of the yard, the back of the yard. Next slide. So that receiver will, now that he's cleaned up everything, he'll move forward with the rehab of the property, submitting building plans, pulling building permits. And so the receiver will oversee the construction and the rehab all the way to completion. And then eventually the buyer will probably sell the property and will pay the receiver, pay the city any fees or legal costs that they're owed. And if there's anything left, then it would typically go back to the owner. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Christina? Donna?
I think that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I must say that I haven't seen all these places. Where are they?
So the last one that we saw is at the corner of Buena Vista and Cactus. The demolition with the pool is up on Quinta on the south side. I think that we probably don't notice a lot of them because when they're blighted, you look at them, and then when they're not anymore, they kind of disappear off your radar. But yeah.
Okay, the one where the house looked okay, but the back was all full of stuff and everything. How did you see that? I don't understand. Do people complain or?
Yeah, so that one in particular, because there was an encampment in the backyard, there was some serious cause for concern, and the neighbors reported it. They were, obviously using the backyard as a restroom and a shower, and so people were very concerned for the health and safety of the public as well as their children playing outside. So we got a slurry of complaints about that one.
Well, you're doing a good job because that's some bad-looking stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine, thank you very much for this presentation. It was excellent, knowing what I do with the code because of being in the department, and this will answer every question that I've been asked by numerous people. So
Right.
Thank you for this presentation.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask, would it be possible to get the footsteps
Yeah.
put on the on your portion of the website so that people can see?
Yeah, so
what-
that's a basic flow chart that I've created, and so we're going to get that over to our marketing team so that they can format it and put it onto the website. I'm also working on some other flow charts to compile a code enforcement manual, which we've never had at the city, so it's an undertaking, but it's on the way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great
Oh,
presentation.
okay, Lee.
I just want to say I'm glad to have code enforcement back, and I'm sure Commissioner Levy is too, because he's wanted this for a long time.
Yes.
Very good
I am
presentation.
more than happy to have our
Great
code
presentation.
enforcement back in-house. I couldn't be happier.
Happy to be here.
You're right about that, Lee.
Ken, go ahead, please.
Well, sure. Very informative presentation, and it was an educational endeavor for me. I just found out just how involved the process is and why it takes the amount of time from start to finish. When you have a property that's, that's first initially complained about, becomes a problem to the completion of the process. Why it takes as long as it does, that's something those of us that are lay people don't understand. And any effort on your part to educate us and educate the member of the public will, I'm sure, bear fruit for you. And thank you for that. I just had one question about the process. At some point in your presentation, you mentioned an administrative hearing. Now, when you have the administrative hearing, is that conducted with an arbitrator or is that with a judge of the court?
So it's a third-party hearing officer. We use a collection agency, a ticket processing agency known as Data Ticket. They will assign an officer. They are typically attorneys.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
I'm done. Go ahead.
When you talk about when you have someone up and you have to hear both sides of the case and you say you have to wait for the decision, is there a jury of some sort? Who makes the decision on what's next?
So the hearing officer.
Just one person?
Yeah, the hearing officer is a neutral third party that is sent to us, and so the city presents their case. If it's a public hearing, we also notice any affected property owners. So what we'll typically do is, from the point of the subject property, we will venture out about 500 feet, notice everybody that lives within 500 feet. They're also welcome to attend. They can testify, and then the property owner of the subject property, he can testify, present any evidence, and then also have an attorney present. And they can cross-examine us as well.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you.
Ken, do you have a follow-up?
Just one last question. Should have combined them all when I spoke to you before. When you go through this process, do you have access and cooperation? I'm presuming that you do, but just to have it voiced. Do you have cooperation with obtaining records from if law enforcement makes repeated appearances at the property and following up with complaints of any violations of the law that they're dealing with? And do you have access to any fire response records? If somebody gets called out and there's somebody's lighting fires and they're on the property that shouldn't be there, homeless people, people doing other nefarious things with fires, do you have access to those records?
Yes, absolutely. So the Hyundai Hotel, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. We just successfully revoked their business license and conditional use permit. A large portion of that case was dependent on excessive calls for service, which code enforcement enforces. But we relied heavily on testimony from the police department.
Okay. Okay. That's it. No follow-up this time.
Okay. I never thought about it, Christina, the way you explained it when you said that if we tore something down, it may never get nothing may never get rebuilt because we've levied these assessments on the property. Isn't that something that we could just say in order to promote? Okay, I should probably bust out like in a guitar solo right now, right? No, that would not be a good idea. If we could waive those and say, hey, if we got where we wanted to go, we wanted the eyesore gone. Yeah, it cost us money, but being an eyesore and having to repeatedly go there costs us money. Is that something that we could even look at waiving those assessments or even, and God forbid, we seize property and then when we sell it, or at least we own it as the city. I mean, I'm just asking, is there a way to do either of those two things so we either recoup our costs or we just write it off so we can promote that property being redeveloped, especially on Palm Drive. I mean, we definitely don't want to do that. I understand that. That's why I think we got several structures still standing that probably shouldn't be.
No, absolutely. We take them as a case-by-case basis. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about, noticing the assessor's office, we do that. That's a regular process, what we call issuing a notice of pendency. That is essentially just a fancy term for clouding a title. We do that with every code enforcement case that results in an administrative citation. And the reason for that is that we're trying to recover our cost. When we do that in cases with very large sums of money that are assessed, we make sure that it's recorded so that if the property is ever to be sold, that is a red flag to typically the agent, and then they'll come to us and say, either they want to negotiate, they want to pay the cost, or they'd like the entire thing waived. The city manager, Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he has the authority to waive up to $50,000 in fines. Anything beyond that, he'd have to request from the city council. We have several times, Walt, thought about it in that sense, that it would be more beneficial to the city to have new development than to try to recover these costs. So yes, we have either negotiated those fees down and the buyer and the seller will negotiate who pays that, or we will waive them entirely.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm just like, come on, let's not cut off our nose to spite our face, if we
Yeah,
get rid of a bad
it's not something
property.
that's well known, but it is a very large part of code enforcement's job to release those notices of pendency. It's one of the things that our administrative assistant does every single week as her normal capacity. So we are constantly meeting with buyers and sellers in the city to ensure that we either lower those costs, negotiate those costs, or have them pay them in full so we can recover it and move forward.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That makes me feel a lot better knowing that we do have that option to help people out. And it breaks my heart to see the Hyundai like that, because when it was the Ponce, that's where my wife and I spent our honeymoon night. So, and then went off on our trip after that. And yeah, beauty pageants there. It was a beautiful facility when it was first built, and unfortunately well, the coffee spa was right across the street. That was still standing when I first came to work here, the coffee spa at 8th and Palm. Yeah, you didn't want to be there inside when I was walking through there at 1 o'clock in the morning and running all the transients out, so. Yeah, a lot of fires, typical thing, a lot of fires, a lot of danger, so that was a terrific presentation. Any more questions for Christina? I agree with Cliff, that answered a lot of questions, thank you. Thank you.
welcome.
So learned a lot, so. Okay, good deal. Let's move on to item number 5, traffic congestion. Cliff, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I have had several complaints and run into the issue myself. Northbound on Palm Drive, when you reach the intersection, or just before the intersection at Two Bunch, the entrance to Vaughn's Shopping Center, where McDonald's, Subway, everything is the northbound traffic gridlocks that intersection crossing over, so that the southbound traffic cannot turn and get through when the traffic light is at red. And it has started to cause some problems because people that are in that east southbound lane swerve out into the west side of the road, and it's just about caused a couple of accidents that I've seen. And I was out there today and I took some pictures, and those are in your packets. The first one is exactly what I'm talking about. It's the northbound lane, and they have blocked the crossover. Page 2, it'll show you the intersection, or the crossover where I'm talking about. The next page is southbound turning into the lane, and you can see there how the traffic is backed up so that there's not able for anyone to cross over. And if you notice on that, you'll see that a water company truck and one of our own public works truck was blocking it today too. So that really annoyed me when I saw that it was a city truck and a water truck from the water company not having the courtesy to let the traffic flow. So I would like to make a motion to approach council about having 2 no gridlock signs put up just prior to on that northbound lane. Steve, have you, after I spoke to you about this, have you looked into what it would take to get those signs up?
Yeah, and then again, I asked our Assistant City Manager, Daniel Porras, to come today because he has a lot of expertise in this, to let you know exactly the process on how we go about doing that.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Danny?
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, we actually did look into this, that left turn pockets and left turns in general that are unsignalized are always unsafe. It's matter of fact, unless it's completely signalized, it's always gonna be unsafe. The way we can make it safer is by adding, obviously, the medians, which will be raised to protect the head-to-head on collisions. Now, when they're near an intersection, it does cause gridlock and it does back them up. The way we do it is we install just pavement markings with keep clear signs, and we do put up signage. The chief brought up to our attention, and we are getting some striping contractors to give us some proposals to see how much that would cost. I don't believe we will need any type of action from city council. We can handle it at the staff level.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
So Dan, that doesn't, I mean, we always preach up here that, if you want to get something done in traffic, it's got to have like an engineering study or something. This is something that falls below that?
Correct, yeah. When we do traffic analysis would be for any impacting stop signs, so stop sign warrant analysis, traffic signal warrant analysis as well, speed humps, any type of changing the traffic signal timing or sequencing, those type of engineering upgrades or changes do require an engineering traffic analysis.
Okay.
Pavement markings, as long as they meet MUTCD, which is the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Manual, traffic control devices, it's as long as we meet those requirements, we can go ahead and change the striping. This is an obvious, easy fix. Drivers should be courteous enough to actually allow it. Unfortunately, the traffic is backing up now in a way that it goes all the way to that left turn pocket, so it can be easily achieved.
Yeah, the problem I've seen there though coming in is that the number 1 lane will be courteous.
And
The number 1
yeah,
northbound
right,
lane.
number 2, yeah.
And the driver will start their left turning maneuver
Correct.
into the shopping center, but the number 2 lane person's like, whatever.
And so unfortunately, it's visibility. Sometimes they don't realize why they're stopping and why
Exactly.
they're not. So yeah, I drove it too a few times and I realized what was going on. So we were definitely on top of it. So we'll make some improvements to that.
Okay, cool. Anybody, Donna, you have
I
something?
do. People are not courteous, and you need to put signs up, remember courtesy, whatever. But when you finally do make that turn into Vaughn's, then you're bombarded with the lines from McDonald's.
Correct.
And that is just horrendous. I mean, you can't make a right to go to the other stores on the right side. And they block it so badly, sometimes you can't even get straight down there. What can we do about that? That's horrible. I mean, and plus, if you could get into McDonald's, you have to make this weirdo U-turn into it. And, if you're a driver like me, you take a little curb and you take a little, I think it's a bad situation. Can't we do something?
Correct. So unfortunately, those projects were approved the way they were approved back in whenever they were
Yeah.
approved. And they are private property. They're not owned by the city. It's a private parking lot. It is a public access way, but it's still a private parking lot. Somebody owns it, somebody maintains it. We have been in communication with both the Emerald across the street and Vaughn's. During COVID, it was a good problem. We had a lot of extra traffic due to drive-throughs. And I think that's when everybody noticed it the most. And we have contacted both owners of those parking lots to make improvements. You can see the Emerald at Starbucks. They added the same thing, keep clear sites, and it kind of helped that situation a little bit out. The McDonald's added cones, and it seemed to help out a little bit more, but we'll stay in contact with them, see if they can add another keep clear zone on that area.
But what is private is not the other people. Here you have McDonald's and their drive-through, but in the lane to go to Vaughn's,
Correct. Unfortunately, it's not public property. That's what I meant. It's somebody owns it, yeah. So either it's Vaughn's or it's Vaughn's, the shopping center, they're required to maintain it and update it and repave it and so forth. So we are in communication with them about that exact issue, and we have been with both shopping centers.
All right. Thank you.
Lee?
Daniel, I think I just noticed some amber lights going up on those, what do you want to call it, pedestrian crossing people, the warning signs. Were those amber signs, those amber lights part of your deal, or is that something that was added?
Yes, amber signs for pedestrian crosswalks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rapid reflect, the rapid flashing ones. We have some on
Part of
Hacienda.
the original thing?
Yes.
Okay, I want to take the time to congratulate you and your staff for the wonderful job you did.
Good.
Also, Bennett, you did a good job now that you're an assistant manager.
That's
I
right.
congratulate you for that.
Thank you very much.
Cliff?
Yeah, I have another question, Danny. There at that, the shopping center across, the Vaughn Shopping Center across from McDonald's, there seems to be always, who's in charge of maintaining or cleaning the trash cans that are out there?
The Starbucks shopping center, that area?
No, over at the, across from the McDonald's, the turn there on the left.
That's the Emerald Shopping Center, right?
No, it's the Vaughn Shopping Center.
Oh, within the Vaughn Shopping Center, it's Vaughn's.
Okay, something needs to be brought to their attention because the trash there on the corner is always overflowing. And also, there are more trash cans needed down that southbound or north-south strip.
Yeah, we could look into that. Yeah, that's also privately maintained by either Vaughn's or whoever exactly that trash cans are located
Well,
within.
the trash can there on the corner by Subway.
They're usually very, very well responsive to anything we ask them to do, so it'll just be a matter of fact to bring it to our attention. We can do that.
Okay, thank you. Because it's going to cause rodents to start appearing and.
Correct.
So-
And Commissioner Eastman, I just have a quick note.
Lee?
When we had those rapid flashes, we actually just installed LED rapid flash stop signs on Pearson and Little Morongo, and they're actually programmed to stay off until they actually detect a vehicle coming. They actually dim different times of the day as well. It's a 4-way stop sign, so it alerts traffic that there is a stop sign coming. Those are brand new, state of the art. We're trying them out at that intersection. It looks like they're working. We're going to install some more on Pearson and Indian next. So we're trying to elaborate on some of that technology that's now available, and it's very, very neat, the technology that's there.
Outstanding. Good work. Good
Yeah.
work.
They're pretty neat. Take a look at them.
Well, we got to watch these pedestrians. They're not going to watch. We got to watch them.
That's right.
That's the law. I mean, people don't know that, but they've got to stop these people.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Mr. Porras? Okay, Daniel, you can get out of here and go home. Sorry we kept you so long. But thank you for the report. It's always great to see, most of the time in other places, they always yell at the police department. You have to fix that problem, and it's always better to see the traffic engineering, the engineer people fixing the location rather than just having us the police write tickets. It's always much better to do it that way. So, awesome job. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to administrative reports. Animal control. I don't see Stephanie.
I will cover for Stephanie tonight.
Okay, can you handle it, Chief? Or
I can read, so I'm going to read you some stats. I know you have them, but I'm going to just go over some of the highlighted ones for you. And we covered July and August because I think we were on a break in July, so we didn't get a chance to meet. But for animal control for July, again, these guys are keeping very busy and active. A total of 85 citations were issued. They did 64 licenses. They had 69 intakes. 0 seizures for July, with 1 owner surrender. 7 fosters. We sent 19 to rescue and were able to send 22 back to their owners. Unfortunately, we did have 2 euthanized in July. And gave out 4 vouchers. For August, pretty consistent numbers in August, but 67 citations were issued. They did 60 licensed with 56 intakes. 1 surrendered to owner, 2 fosters, 28 were returned to owner, and we had 0 euthanized in August. So pretty consistent on what they're doing month in and month out, but they're taking on a lot of animals. They're getting a lot back to owners. They're getting a lot placed. As always, the goal is to get these animals back to owners or into foster care or into an owner. And the last resort is being euthanized, and that's only if it's for the best interest of the animal because of a health issue or whatever. So they're doing some really great work over there.
No, yeah, that's project has worked. So. Okay, any questions about that? No, we're good? All right. It used to be that would rule like whole meetings, those animal control issues, and now it's like, yeah, everybody's happy. So, okay, code and compliance report. Back to Christina.
Yeah, so for the month of August, we had a total of 122 service requests. We conducted 192 total inspections, issued 59 courtesy notices of violation, and 28 citations totaling $12,200. We also followed up on that administrative hearing order for the Hyundai Hotel that I mentioned. They had been ordered to immediately cease operations following the revocation of their business license and conditional use permit. When we followed up with the re-inspection, we found them still to be in operation, as well as in violation of all of the codes that we cited during the case. We additionally found some life safety issues that we were not originally aware of, and so the building official decided to red tag the building at that point. We followed up by closing all of the pools, caution taping all of the dangerous areas, posting the red tags, and I issued a notice of public nuisance in order to abate to follow up. Issued that to the owner as well as all of the occupants by way of leaving multiple, I believe we left 75 notices at the front desk. In addition to that, we met with the owner of the fire damaged property. I know that's come up before in this meeting, the one on 5th and Palm. So that's the 2-story abandoned fire damaged that was recently sold in an auction. And so we had a meeting with the new owner just to kind of understand his intentions for the property and next steps. By the way, that property is still in litigation, so he will be served. In addition to that, I added some before and after photos of some of the work that a code enforcement officer has had underway. So for a property on Yucca Drive, great before and afters there. Really proud of the work that the code officers are doing. A lot of improvement to property maintenance standards going on within the city. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Christina on the report?
A brief question regarding the Hyundai Hotel. I guess that's how it's pronounced, the
Yes.
same as the car. Having driven there, having driven by it a few times, I've noticed that there was a breach in the fence, that there is actually enough space for vehicular access and certainly pedestrian access as well into the building. I was wondering if that was that on purpose? Is that a new development, or are the owners of the building permitted to go in and out, and are they required to secure that fence when they leave?
So I believe we're maintaining it currently, so there'll be improvements to the fence. The order is for the immediate, cessation of operations, both internally, externally. However, obviously, we don't have people that are following those orders currently. So the barrier, I believe, was put up just to sort of stop some of the traffic into the parking lot, out of the parking lot, and into the hotel. And so we'll continue to monitor it and maintain it.
Okay.
And I can add a little bit on that if you'd like, sir.
Sure.
So we do still currently have some residents in there that we're working, trying to find them, relocate them. The ones that are left are families with children and stuff, so the last thing obviously we want to do is put them out on the street. Once all the residents are gone, then the property itself will be fully fenced and boarded up, and there will be an on-site security at that location to maintain that, and that's where we're headed.
Okay.
Oh, that was just what I was going to say, because I knew someone was in there, because I go past it every evening, and you could tell that someone's living somewhere. Okay, so you just answered that question.
Yeah, we're getting real close, but again, we want to get housing for those folks.
Are they going to
Before
take
they're
down that Flintstone?
We'll see what happens with it, yeah, once we get there.
That's what we all called it. I couldn't believe that.
Okay, and I did notice they did add gates to that, some kind of swinging gates or something to that entrance there, so, yeah, so, yeah, once we get everybody out, because it almost seems like it wasn't operating as a hotel anymore, it was
Correct.
more like apartments,
Correct.
so, okay. So, I mean, we haven't collected TOT out of there for forever, have we?
I don't believe that at the end of the case that they were delinquent. They just, I don't believe were remitting much of any activity.
Right, yeah, so, oh, so sad, such a great place, so,
Yeah.
okay. All right, any other questions? We're good? All right, let's move on. Fire department report. The chief is obviously out and busy, so the only question I had for the chief was, when are we gonna find out what's gonna, we were talking about upgrading and we were all good, and then summer hit and now we're, so, I don't know.
There's sort of an answer coming.
There's sort of an answer coming?
Yeah, when we get to the commissioner reports, I'll elucidate further.
Awesome, okay, I look forward to hearing that. All good, all right, awesome, all right. Then we'll go ahead and move on to item number 9, the police department report, please.
And thank you. And the first thing I'll just go over is the stats. We're doing good, we're doing better collecting those stats. And what I presented to you this month is kind of what it looks like with the new NIBRS reporting. As you see, it's different from the previous months where it's broken down a lot more in the categories. So just some highlights on these. For July and August, no homicides in July, no homicides in August. Our aggravated assaults continue to be pretty consistent throughout the year. We had 12 in July and 14 in August. Our burglaries went down significantly in July and down in August, 16 in July and 9 in August. So we're doing good with that. The motor vehicle theft, again, one of those things that we've been focusing heavily on, down slightly with just 9 cases in July and 8 cases in August. And driving under the influence, we've had a couple checkpoints throughout the city over the last couple of months. And between that and saturation patrols, we had 4 DUI arrests and 3 in August. I have some stats on that. We're still working with, we have the new system, the Mark 43 system, and that gives us the stats on the reports taken, calls for service, and it breaks it down a little bit more. We're still working with Mark 43 and cleaning that up. So I didn't give you guys all those stats because there's a lot that we need to go back and really double check what Mark 43 is giving me. But I do have some that I can tell you. For July, the officers made 458 traffic stops, and in August they made 389 traffic stops. Calls for service in July were 5,109, and for August they were 4,962. So the officers are out there, they're doing proactive work. We're getting a lot of calls for service, but they're handling them all, so they're just doing a fantastic job between the patrol officers and the detectives. Budget-wise, obviously we're only 2 months, we're almost finishing up the first quarter of the budget, but we're looking real good for the police department. We're at 20%, which is exactly where we should be for that first quarter. Code compliance is at 19, again, just under budget for the first quarter, and animal control is at 16%. So very early on, but looking good, and we anticipate staying within our guidelines and our budget for the year.
Is that because of Jessica?
Jessica does a great job, and she definitely keeps us on budget, for sure. For sure.
She's incredible. Yeah, we're blessed to have her. So
Yes, she
you may
does.
not feel that way because she's holding you to your budget, but
She does, but yeah, it is in large part
Yeah,
my
she's
error,
terrific.
so we thank her for that. Other stuff going on, obviously, we talked about the building, the annex, but personnel-wise, we're still looking for new officers, but we have one new officer that we hired recently the last month, so he's in training right now. We'll be presenting him to City Council on September 21st, so we welcome him. We also just hired our communications manager, and so she will be in charge of dispatch. We brought her on early so that she can be in here at the ground floor. We'll be setting up new policy and everything like that, so that's what she's undertaking right now, setting up, getting ready to do interviews for dispatchers. So we have her on board, and she's a great asset. We have one new community service officer that's set to start on September 20th, so in about a week and a half. And we have what will be our third community service officer, which is getting ready to come in for a chief's interview, and we anticipate that going well. And so we may have that third community service officer spot filled here within the next few weeks. So we're still moving forward with the hiring. We're still looking for a couple more officers. The applications, I think we talked about last time, they've dwindled down. It's pretty tough competition out there, but we do have a few applicants coming in. Tom Pettinger, who's our support service manager and does a lot of that initial interviewing, recently participated with the city on a virtual recruitment day. So we're kind of trying to think outside the box at how we can reach some other folks to get their interest in coming out here and applying. But it's just so you know, it's efforts that we continue on, but we're moving in the right direction. And that completes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for the chief?
Just one question. How many officers do we have now?
So we currently are at about 29, 30 officers. We're staffed for 33. It's 34, but that 34th officer is where we're getting those 3 CSO spots from.
Okay.
And so we're about 2 to 3 down.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Lee. Turn on your mic.
Under motor vehicle theft, does that include golf carts?
Golf cart does fall under that, yes.
Includes golf carts.
It does.
Thank you.
Cliff?
Steve, have we received our transport vehicle yet?
No, we have ordered the transport vehicle, but like a lot of things with the vehicle chips and stuff, we anticipate, unfortunately, a bit of a delay in getting that. I don't know if you recall, we ordered some new police vehicles. Oh, gosh, I think it's been 10 months, 11 months ago. We've just had some of them delivered to our outfitter, 10-8, out in the Ontario area. So they're being set up with the lights and communication packages and stuff. But there's definitely a delay. It's not on our end or anything like that. Obviously, the plants, the manufacturers have some delays and stuff. But we have started our transportation. Our current CSO is doing prisoner transports right now. He's just using a marked vehicle to take those transports. And again, as we bring in these other 2, or hopefully the other 2 CSOs, they will help with that also. So we have them doing our transports. Once we get that transport van, it'll be a whole lot easier, because then obviously we can put more people in the van and take less trips. But it has been ordered.
Okay. Next meeting, could you bring some, or even just email me pictures of our holding facility now?
The holding facility? Certainly.
You can just email me or text me tomorrow,
Sure.
whenever you get a chance. I think that's it.
That's it? Okay.
I have
Ken?
one more.
Go ahead, Don.
I'm sorry. Okay. Didn't you just have a, I don't know what you call it, when you stop the people at night and see if they're drinking and all that kind of, didn't we just have one of those?
We did over by Palm and Two Bunch.
Right.
We did.
Did that go well?
It did. We had about 1,500 vehicles go through the checkpoint, and we had no DUIs, which is actually a good thing, because the focus of those is not to actually catch DUIs, it's for an education purposes. At the same time, besides the DUI checkpoint that goes on there that we're looking for, it's also we're checking driver's license for suspended license and unlicensed drivers.
Oh, okay.
And I want to say we had 4 unlicensed drivers that went through there.
Wow.
So, and then one other thing that I forgot about, I'll just give a shout out for, is next week, September 14th, Tuesday, at Word of Life Church, there'll be a police community forum that'll be going on. And so we invite the public to attend to that. Myself and Chief Henson will be there to answer any questions of the public. And so anybody that's interested in attending that, it's free of charge.
What time?
7 p.m.
And where
I
again is
think, I'm
that?
hoping it's 7. It might be 6. I should have double checked that.
Word of Life.
Yeah, which one is
Which
that?
is
Pearson,
on Pearson, just west of the police station.
right after Indian on the south
Oh,
side.
okay, the old Lutheran church?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
It was there last time, correct? Yes, yes.
Okay. Anything else, Donna? No? Ken? You're good? Yeah, I just had two quick questions. One is I'm looking at shoplifting. Is there a reason why there's all those zeros there? Is it to do with the new Prop 47 changes, or?
So the shoplifting, it's one of the NIBRs, how they define it, and the Prop 47 stuff, and I'm just looking on here where that's at, Commissioner.
I mean, is it because nobody's stealing below 950 anymore, or?
Yeah, well, it's got to be below 950, and
Yeah.
a lot of it's being handled by the stores themselves, where they're just not calling PD for us,
Okay.
to come over and
Yeah.
take care of it. They're handling it civilly or just internally within
Yeah.
the stores.
Mhm. And then the second thing is I monitor that, what is it, next door app thing that you and I were
Next door,
talking about?
yep.
Yeah, and there were some questions on there about the, where's the motor officer? Now, I've seen the motor officer out there, and so I know he's been out, so, but maybe you could address that and just say what's going on with the motor officer program.
Yeah, so we do have 2 motors, and one of them is a sergeant, so he's doing dual duties as a watch commander, but he's also working on the motor. In fact, tomorrow he's doing a traffic enforcement day, and I know he does usually on Fridays, and mixes it up sometimes during the week and stuff. So he is out there. Our full-time motor officer did get injured during training, probably about a month and a half ago. So he's not back yet. We're hoping to get him back soon, but so he's on the mend, but we do have 2 motors that are out there.
Okay, all right.
And
So-
then for next week, it is 7 PM, so.
7 PM at the Word of Life.
Yes.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, anything else for the chief?
I have one more.
Oh, go ahead.
How is our local car thief? Has he been apprehended anymore? Has his...
We've been doing good. Our numbers have been going down. We did have the cases where we had that rash of cars being broken into, and it was a group of about 4 or 5, mostly juveniles, that we did apprehend, and unfortunately, we apprehended them several times because we got them and they were released. But since that incident, there have not been any other rashes, big increases, both in vehicle theft or break-ins.
And what about the one that was just habitual? 40-some, I think Jim said.
I don't recall which one. I think that's that one that gentleman that
Wait.
was arrested several times and 24 hours later, have not had any issues with him, at least here in Desert Hot Springs recently.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, when you look at those numbers, it just goes to show you the COP, the community-oriented policing concept of 20% of the crooks do 80% of the crime it's right there in the numbers. Yeah, the numbers support it, so, all right, great, thank you, Chief. Commissioner reports, who wants to start? Okay, Donna.
Okay, I was going to talk about the congestion, but Cliff handled that. And the other thing that I have is, we were driving home today on Two Bunch Palms, and all of a sudden, I'm starting to choke, and my husband is going, and he's smiling. Whatever you call it, marijuana smell was so bad, it came into our car. My husband was happy as a lark, but it was choking me. What happened to all the regulations?
Where was that at?
On all those buildings on Two Bunch Palms.
Oh, okay.
What happened to all those regulations we have that they're not supposed to, to be any smell or anything? It was
Does that fall into you, Christina, or that special team?
No, that falls under me. So we just recently did a repeal and replacement of the cannabis regulations, and we did make a slight alteration to the odor sort of the odor regulations and the odor compliance plans with respect to the industrial district only, light industrial, that is where most of the cultivations are housed. So there still is a no tolerance policy in place for the storefront retails, but we found that it's very hard to minimize or have no odor whatsoever in the light industrial during times of distribution and things like that. So we will go out and take a look and see if it's, beyond the property line, because it shouldn't be. But we leave a little bit of room for, it coming out. I think it's to the middle of the street now, but it shouldn't be overwhelming. So we'll definitely take a look.
Well, we toured some of those buildings and they told us all about how they kept that odor, down and it was. But I'm telling you, it was totally strong. It was not bright. I mean, I'm sure young kids could just keep driving back and forth and have a ball all day long. It was awful. And, I'm one that never did it, so it was choking me. So it made me angry, actually, because we had gone, I was in on some of those meetings when they were making the rules for, all of those buildings. And that it shouldn't be. It's not just a little odor, it was big. And we're driving, so it's in the middle of the street.
Okay, we will definitely take a look at that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's all that I have.
Thank you. It's really nice to have you here, Christina.
Thank you.
We really don't want to add to your workload, but it is really nice to have you here. Don't scare her off, Donna. Don't scare her away, okay? Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Okay, go ahead, Ken, thank you.
All right, well, Commissioner Lozano said that's all she had. Well, that's sort of true, because she's been my wing person throughout ever since we were assigned as sub-commissioners for the purpose of fire enhancement. So, of course, I had an issue. I did less than I was hoping to accomplish during our dark months. But we were able to get a meeting together with the city manager, a representative from CAL FIRE, and the two of us. And we sat down and we were informed as to the progress of the fire service enhancement project. And we were able to learn some things. Before I get into any of the details, I should say right off the top that there is a forthcoming presentation to the city council. The specifics will be delineated then. I don't want to steal all of their thunder. And so Mr. Rainey was very generous. He's going to let us know when that meeting is going to take place. So when that's when most of the specifics will be released. In general, though, we did speak about the bond measure. We spoke about they're very excited about proceeding with Fire Station 98, a phenomenon I'm familiar with. We ran out of numbers out in San Mateo County as well. So you would have Menlo Park Fire would have engines 1 through 6 and then 77, and they wanted to know how that happened. This is, well, all the other numbers were taken. Woodside had 7 through 9, and they had to go back and get 9. Well, anyway, I'm getting off track. But there were a couple of questions that I had, and specifically I wanted to know there were some operational changes that are coming in the pipe for CAL FIRE, how they do business. And that's going to affect the apparatus that is going to be stationed at Station 98. And the apparatus that's going to be stationed there is going to affect the staffing, which was a question that was posed by Councilmember Batts. He wanted to know what the staffing was and what the attendant cost would be. One of the operational changes that was coming was the one that was likely to take the greatest length of time was the switch from the 72-hour work week to a 56-hour work week. Now, that's a pretty significant change in working conditions. I'm almost certain it's going to have to go through labor management negotiations and the like, so there was no definite date that was put together as to when that was going to take place. But that's going to affect the number of personnel that are assigned to the apparatus. For example, they currently believe CAL FIRE uses a 2.67 full-time equivalent for every 3 positions that they fill. Well, if they go to a 56-hour work week, that's going to be 3 full-time equivalents for every 3 positions that they fill. So that's going to increase the costs, potentially. They did decide to go ahead and do what's called municipal fire staffing here at Station 37. They are now switching to 1 captain, 1 paramedic, and 1 engineer on every shift on the engine to divide up the responsibilities, to make sure that there's no overlap, to make sure that a paramedic can function on his or her duties, the captain can function on, command, scene safety, and whatever their assignments are, and the engineer can focus on driving, arriving at the scene, pumping, placing apparatus, and the like. And if there's a paramedic engineer, he can do those jobs without having to worry about switching over to command functions or anything like that. The other operational change was the switch from using 35-foot ladders on engine companies to 24-foot ladders, as is required by NFPA Standard 1901, I believe, is automotive fire apparatus and the equipment that they carry. Currently in the city, there's if you were going to access the roof or an upper floor of a structure, say the Aqua Soleil Hotel, that ladder that could reach the 3rd floor or the roof of that building would be a 35-foot ladder affixed to an engine. Unfortunately, those ladders are very heavy. I can speak from personal experience just how heavy they are. And for an engine company to effectively raise them and use them up against buildings would promulgate firefighter injuries, because, of course, in an emergency situation, you would love to spot and place and put them up against a building in the proper way. That doesn't happen 100% of the time. Probably referring to the 80-20 rule that the chairman frequently invokes. So in order to ameliorate the injury problem, they were thinking about, well, they're not thinking, it's in progress. They're taking the 35-foot ladders off and putting 24-foot ladders on. What that does is now if you have a higher building, and with the growth that Desert Hot Springs is experiencing, it's only a matter of time. I'll bet you the meager amount of money in my wallet, you're going to have a high-rise in this city pretty soon. I'm sure developers are kind of knocking at the door, desiring to put larger buildings inside in this town. A 24-foot ladder won't be sufficient to do above-ground operations for the buildings that are coming. I know that there's a conditionally approved condominium project off of Palm, I believe it's called Marbella. And if I know it's conditionally approved, some modifications have to be made to it, but I understand that there's supposed to be as many as 17 three-story buildings in that project. And what's going to happen if you have a fire on the 2nd floor, or people who live on the 3rd floor are not going to descend through the fire and smoke to get to the ground. They're either going to stay in place or they're going to go to the roof. You can't get to them with a 24-foot ladder. So if the engines are removing these 35-foot ladders, now what becomes imperative is to put a ladder company at Station 98. What we know in the vernacular is the quint, because it has 5 purposes: booster tank, pump, hose, ground ladders, 115 foot required by NFPA, and an aerial device. Okay, that would affect the staffing, because quints, according to CAL FIRE, staff 4 firefighters, versus a triple combination pumper, like Engine 37, which we staff with 3. Most of these questions will be answered more in detail by the presentation that's forthcoming. But in the interim period, that answered my questions as to whether they put it at 98. What's still up in the air is the paramedic squad. Ideally, if everything goes right, I've been through 2 fire station remodels, and I've been through 2 fire station tear down and rebuilds. I know I'm running on here. I'll try and wrap this up pretty quick. But the fire station rebuilds that were torn down and rebuilt from the ground up, everything goes right, you're looking at 18 to 24 months. And I mentioned to the city manager and the representative from CAL FIRE, the division chief, these guys at 37 needs help sooner than later. The clock's ticking. We're kind of playing Russian roulette with what's going on there.
Well, plus they were going to remodel.
Right, and they want to remodel Station 37 in much the same vein as the police department's remodeling and expanding their facilities. So the paramedic squad was not particularly alluded to in this meeting, at least not at this time. They're moving more forcefully toward the Station 98 solution. But again, in the presentation that's forthcoming, perhaps that question will be answered as to what can be done in the meantime to alleviate the workload on the guys at 37. That's about it, thankfully.
Okay. I'm looking forward to the meeting then. So, all right. Anybody? Ken? I'm sorry, Lee?
I just want to say it was a good meeting, good presentation, and try to keep Jan Pye in your mind and say a prayer for her.
Cliff?
I have nothing further.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing I've got is based upon that, what Ken just reported. I hope the powers that be keep in mind that like 80% of our calls are Medicaid. So, a quint with a fire pumper and air hose and 90 things and, I'm sorry, that's not going to reduce the workload on our current fire thing. We need a medical aid thing. So I'm hoping that's where we're going with that. That's when we look at the numbers bear it out. Now if we're planning on more high-rise buildings like 3, 4, 5-story condos and things like that, that's something 2 years down the road when we get the fire station built, then we can look at putting that in there. But the immediate need, and we can put a medic unit in 37. And somebody will probably say, no, you can't. And I'll say, no, we did in 1986 when I came here, we did. And it was there through into the 90s. And not only did we put a medic unit, I think we put a volunteer, the volunteers vehicle who responded as paramedics also was in there when they had a volunteer program up here. So I really do hope the concentration is going to be on something to provide medical service, rapid medical service that can relieve the fire truck to go fight fires. So, and I don't want to lift a 35-foot. I don't even want to go up it, but I wonder if that's something that also goes in the planning commission, that when they're looking at those condos, we're putting escape ladder type things on them so people can get out or the fire department can get in. I don't know, is that one of those back east things that we're not allowed to do out here on the West Coast maybe or something? I don't know. So, but that's a great point. But like I said, right now, when you're running 350 calls a month and 330 of them are Medicaids, then
Sure.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious what our issue is. So.
Well, just to dovetail into that a little bit, every fire apparatus is capable of running medical calls. I used to run medical calls on a 54-foot long tractor-drawn aerial truck.
Yeah.
As long as it has a paramedic and the medical equipment accoutrements, it can certainly do the job of running the EMS calls. And I guess what they were trying to say in the presentation, and I guess I can echo that point here, is if you're going to invest in a new fire station, new apparatus, not only do you have to take into account the current problem, but you also have to look down the line. You have to go look at what the city's going to look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20, 25 years from now, because you're spending a lot of money. If you're going to spend a large amount of money, you want to make sure that if you're going to build a fire station, it's going to be there 50 years. And you build it large enough that's only going to be able to accommodate a triple combination pumper. Then you have 4 or 5, 6 or 7-story buildings built.
Yeah, I agree. Build the facility for the future, but
you have to go back and accommodate a quint anyway.
The service need is not for a quint right now. It's
right.
I think that's a little bit of overkill to handle the Medicaid problem we have. So sending 5 people to help get somebody, and a lot of those calls are putting people back in bed, or they don't feel good, or something like that. And the fire people do a great job helping people. They are awesome. They've been to my house on a Medicaid call and they did an outstanding job. I couldn't have been happier. And they did. They saved my wife. So I would just love to see the Engine 37 get something to help them take the burden off with all those medical aids and really, and let the fire truck fight fires.
Yeah.
But, I'm just an old retired cop. So anything else for the good of the order? Thank you, Ken.
No problem.
Yeah. Anything else? No? All right. Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. That was a great meeting. We learned a lot tonight. Thank you.